In this episode of Candid, we're going to be talking about the business of Deliverica, founded by Godiragetse, who literally has expanded this business into Limpopo, Mpumalanga, and Gauteng, primarily serving the townships in delivering last mile conveniences such as fast food as well as groceries. Gudi shares some extremely insightful practicalities around running his business, together with where they're going next. I hope that you'll enjoy it. Goody, thank you so much for joining me for this episode on the business conversations format in Candid. Let's jump straight into it. I think, first of all, how is business currently going? We're in February 2024. What's happening right now? And we'll go from there.
Cool. No, thanks, man. And thanks for having me on your platform. Look, I think first part of the year, which is, Q1 for us, is all about preparation and planning towards, the later parts of the year. There's really some exciting things that we'll be launching, some really exciting partnerships that, are going to be known later this year. And I think for us, we've used this time to prepare and plan and make sure that when that time comes, all our systems are ready and the team is ready for all that demand as well that will come during that time. So yeah, that's what Q1 looks like for us.
So the one thing I shared with in the intro is very much focused on where your team or where your operations are currently based in terms of offering convenience to customers. For Deliverica now, if you think about that convenience, I'd like to think about it as two sides of the same coin. So the one side is you've got the convenience for your customers, whereby they're not needing to, stand in queues waiting for taxis, or even, spending on taxis, or using or asking people to use taxis and waiting queues to go fetch stuff for them. Yep. For that side of the coin, I completely understand it. And I think the likes of Uber Eats, Mr. D, they're very much positioning their businesses to take on that side of the coin. But what I find very interesting around the other side of the coin, another type of, let's call it customer for you, is the suppliers, is the fact that where you are targeting in terms of the geographic locations, primarily townships, underserved areas, in that capacity, then you're offering them not only access then to a previously inaccessible area, as well as safety. Just talk to me about how that relationship has evolved when it comes to your suppliers that you've actually been onboarding. Because I know about Telkom, Spar2U, so maybe just to elaborate into that.
Sure. No, thanks for that, man. I think, look, when we came in, I think in hindsight, we just didn't know, how the need is for a service like ours is needed, especially in the townships, right? So if you look at our platform, it's basically an ecosystem of suppliers, which we call them merchants, and it's the logistic partners as well, which are our riders, and then we have our customers, right? And we come in and try to mix all these guys together and make sure that there's a pleasant service, at the end of it. And what we've seen with the suppliers, which is the merchants, is that they struggle a lot with stock. So you would see during the day they would switch off meals because they ran out of stock, and it's not because they want to switch off and stop trading, but it's just because the hurdle of getting stock again, they probably have to drive to town or have to catch a taxi or so, just so that they could replenish their stock. And with experience with 1.5 years trading with these guys, because again, it's a bad experience on our side when our customers go to our app and they realize that, this menu is half, offline. So we now started a company called Stocker app, which now provides these guys with stock, within an hour. So before they run out of potatoes or bread or cool drinks, they're able to order from our side, and they don't even have to pay immediately because we already have their financials on our side. So they could do a buy now, pay later, because we still have some cash on our side that, is due to them because of the sales that they have been doing through our app. So that's something that I think it's been in its POC phase for some time now. And I think this is the year where we're looking at scaling it, because we see that it's not even only for the local merchants here. You'd be surprised that even the big franchises switch off, items, because they run out of stock. And they're waiting for their truck to come from the DC, right, to come and replenish that stock. And we're saying, look, for things that are, not very unique, how can we replenish, these big franchises as well, which is an opportunity that exists in our space. Yeah.
Excellent. And I think this is exactly what is required when anyone creates a marketplace where there's sellers and buyers within that marketplace. You're needing to create that stickiness of not only keeping the customers, but also, let's call it the buyers, but also keeping the sellers on the platform. And I think this is a great way through actually listening to the sellers how you can even add more convenience, which, as you've said, it adds just a better knock-on effect to the buyers at the end of the day, ordering and not having unavailable items that they want in that moment.
Yeah, and I think look, it's because
yeah.
we've been through that road, right? And it takes a lot of research to understand what these guys need, right? And we're saying, look, as much as we're an aggregator, how can we help, right? And obviously still make money out of it, right? And Stocker app is actually something like that. And now in every area that we go into, when we present ourselves to these merchants, we also, present the partnership with Stocker app, which they love, because it saves them time. They don't have to go to town or anywhere to stock. Buy now, pay later is like a great, payment method that it helps them with cash flow, but also getting stock delivered to them, right? Which before was never, a thing. They always had to go out, and sometimes it means closing the shop. Right. So Stocker app, we really see it as something that could be a game changer in the future. Yeah.
So let's then jump into the relationships that you formed both with Telkom, but I would say more importantly in this case with Spar to You, and if there is any other grocery businesses that I'm unaware of. But right now, are you seeing that as really a great platform for you to then jump from in offering this value add to sellers, and thereby as a consequence benefiting the buyers?
Yeah. So with what we've seen coming into the last mile, business is that a lot of people want to deliver, right? A lot of businesses want that part of last mile, and the struggle is they don't want to own scooters. They don't want to manage drivers, right? And what we've been able to do is grow massively in the townships, right? And we've sort of become the first guy who's like the last mile in the township. And we've done it quite well, where we employ quite a lot of young people in the townships who are now the last mile partners. And guys like Spar, when they want to penetrate townships, we are the go-to, option, right? Because we already have the infrastructure, we have the scooters, we have the team, and it's a plug and play for them. And I think a lot more of these businesses are starting to think that way, to say, look, instead of starting our own delivery business, how can we partner with someone who, is doing quite well in that area? So the Spar one is an exciting one for us, and we're obviously looking forward to growing to more and more stores with them. And just creating that sustainability, especially for our riders, so that they don't just depend on Deliverica speed orders, but they could get orders from Spar and still fulfill them. Yeah.
People overseas, they've got a specific idea and a very limited idea of South Africa, right? They think everyone's basically just running around a lot of the time, and there's wild animals, running around as well. So we've got that stigma against us. But I would argue also that then South Africans and those that specifically haven't ever visited or lived or been in a township before, they also have that typical type of stigma or lack of understanding of what actually is happening, right? And where the opportunities are together with the challenges. So taking that angle, if you were to think about what is currently happening right now within the township economy, I've heard the term Ekasi, economy basically. And would you say that there is quite a drive to people not necessarily professionalizing, but formalizing a lot of what they're doing, taking business far more seriously than they possibly have done in the past, because they've got access to technology at a lesser cost, or access to, of course, your services? What are you seeing right now within that Ekasi economy?
Yeah, no, look, I think, if you look at the townships, just the way they are structured, right? So a township is basically quite a distance, from the urban area or the city. And in that, you try to have everything to make a community work, right? So you would have your shopping centers, you'd have the schools, you'll have all the government institutions in that part of the area, right? But the problem is the high, youth unemployment that exists. Well, basically unemployment that exists in these areas, and it tech and gig economy, we see it as a big enabler for employment, right? So we see it as for guys who are unemployed, to now be able to make a living, right? Because things are changing. I think before it's always been go to school, get your degree, and then you'll get a fancy job at an office and all of that. But a lot of young people in the townships are realizing that that is a small percentage of people who are able to go through that. Then what about the rest, right? And what really matters is participating in the economy, right, in a meaningful way, and making a life, right? And making a life in the townships, right? Because before we would see people who would come into or grow up in a township, go to school, and then leave the township and stay in the suburbs and that. But now that's changing, right? So there's more and more, development that's happening in the townships. There's a lot of malls that have popped up, in the townships between now and 10 years ago, right? And that shows that the buying power still lies in the township. I mean, interesting fact, majority of the South Africans, stay in townships, right? And that's a big number. And now with businesses like us is saying, how can we use tech, right, to enable people to participate, in this economy much better, right? We exist as a convenience platform, right? And with convenience, we're saying, look, you're a school teacher, you're a police officer, you're a nurse in the townships. How do we make sure that during your lunchtime, you don't have to go to the mall and queue, right? How do you relax and we get the food delivered to you so that you can get to work and not waste time, for the people serve, right? Because we know how government, services can be sometimes. So we're saying, look, we'll bring the food to you so that you can, be better at work and focus on things that really matter, right? But in providing that convenience, we're also like employing, the young people who would otherwise be sitting by the corners and would otherwise be contributing to the high crime levels that we have in the townships. But now these guys are on scooters, they're making a positive living. I mean, if you check on our YouTube channel, you would see guys who started from a bicycle to an e-bike to a scooter that one day he will own through the partnerships that we've been able to make, for empowerment. So I think there's a lot of things happening in the township, but the good things are popping up. And I think it's just a matter of the mindset as well, right, of the people in the township to look at gig economy as a way to really make some sustainable, life. Yeah.
But again, like using that example, from overseas and the interpretation that South Africans have for the US and the UK, like we've got such a lower view of ourselves in terms of what we can contribute relative to what's happening in the US based on, let's call it the media, and based on the content, that we're absorbing, or based on the content that we're consuming there. And I think it's the same thing here, right? Where if you're going to now give people hope, if you're going to give them an opportunity where not only can they earn money, but and be employed or kind of start their own business, there's a level of dignity and there's a level of pride that comes with that. And a lot can happen when I'm proud of what I do and I take ownership of what I do. That has a ripple effect, that is, in my opinion, invaluable.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, one of the coolest things we've done is, understanding the market that we operate in, right? And look, growing up in a township and staying in a township myself, I understood, that people in the township, especially the men, mentally, they're not okay, right? They struggle so much, right? And yes, we could say, they go towards alcohol and all sorts of other substances, to try and, feel better. But it's a real challenge that people have. And there's no business, right, in the townships that when you go to, you get out feeling good, right? The cashiers shout at you, the taxi driver doesn't really give a good customer service. So imagine you're this breadwinner, you've worked so much, right, for your family and that. but the people around you, they don't appreciate you. Where you go and get services, they don't see your value. And we came in with Deliverica Speed, and we started giving out motivational quotes, right? For every order, that we deliver, it's literally in a paper, right? We would give you, right, for you to read, and that costs us zero, right? Like, it doesn't cost us anything, but the impact that does, to that, father who's a breadwinner, and he's reading a message every Monday. We always say, new week, we try again, right? And it says, look, yes, we see you're trying, and guess what? It's a new week. We're not going to stop trying. We're going to keep trying, right? And that's powerful, dude. And I remember when I did it, I only did it because it was for me. I just wanted to motivate myself. But now, if a customer doesn't get one, they literally call the office. They're like, hey, your driver didn't give me a motivational code. What's happening, right? So I think for us, it's understanding, that to say, look, we need to bring back the dignity, of people in the townships. You need to feel good, dude. When you spend your money, where you spend your money. That's why a lot of people go to the fancy, retailers and all that, because they know when they get there, the atmosphere is great. You're gonna get out there feeling good, right? And that's what we've been trying to do with Deliverica Speed. And otherwise as well, in reverse, the driver who's giving out that motivation, when they see the response from the customer, it also makes them feel good, right? So I think that's one thing we've been able to do quite well, and we look forward to continuing that, man.
My takeaway there is like very much along the lines of you're moving this from just being a providing a product, and you're moving this beyond even a service to that relationship, creating relationships individually with your customers. And as a consequence, of course, there's from a business point of view, especially from the marketing side with word of mouth, people love to talk about that experience then. And so it's very sustainable. And it actually reminds me then of Yappy Chef when they used to write letters. The packer or the picker used to write letters to customers, and they would leave it in their parcels, as an example, right? And it just shows you how impactful it is, because people realize this isn't just an item that they're getting delivered. These are people that are involved in this, and we want to make sure that we see you, if you know what I mean.
But more than anything, we care, right? Yes, you bought the food, you'll get it delivered gas speed. That's standard, right? But we take it a step further to say we care about you. We see you. You're trying, right? And I mean, our motivational codes are not, your typical, codes. We go deep, right? To say, look, I mean, my favorite one was just because they're in your, what did I say? Just because they're in your circle, it doesn't mean they're in your corner. And man, that hit me, right? And I was like, wow, that's big. So it's things like that for you to understand, because we go through a lot, especially in the township. Guys are struggling proper, and for us as a company, and my frustration is, why are the big retailers and all these big chains not doing something like that? And dude, it costs us literally a cent, right, to do something like that. But the impact, oh my God, it's massive, right? And I think we need things like that to really get the people feeling good. And when you feel good, you do good as well, right? And we're just doing our small part.
But this is a huge lesson then, for, let's call it big business or corporate business. And what I mean by that is, I mean where there are people that are so far, or there are people that are so distant from the actual interaction with the customer, right? Where they're looking at income statements, they're looking at profitability reports, or any metric that they need to be measuring, but they're not really taking the time to invest in that experience and that interaction. Because a lot of the times, I mean, I would take this as just hypothetical, but like I can imagine, a big retailer opening up in a township and going, okay, cool, we're going to be opening up in a township. Okay, we're just going to put a blanket stereotype here. Every single person is lower income. Therefore, all the products need to be, at the lowest cost, but we're going to reduce our range, and it's only going to be these, kind of basic products. But in fact, if they took the time to go within that particular community and really to understand what people are kind of needing, and what they're also aspiring toward, they could possibly tailor that better. And like you've just mentioned now, more likely than not come up with an initiative that can really show customers that they care.
Yeah. Look, for me, products, I don't even care, right? I think it's the service. Dude, you could sell the lowest of the lowest products, but the way you sell it, right? To me, as a guy who really had a terrible day, right? Last thing I want is a cashier or, a taxi driver or, someone to shout at me or not make me feel good for spending my money, right? And for me is, why isn't that the standard procedure, right, in all the businesses that operate in the township, to say, hey guys, customer quality, customer service should be of high quality, right? Let's treat these guys as kings and queens, because they are buying from you, right? So for me, it's all about the service, especially if you're in the services business, in the townships. There is, a competitive advantage that you could take, which is just provide a good quality, service, because the customers in the townships are so much in need, of quality services, and that's where we're trying to say, look, delivery, you'll get it 100%, but let's give you more than that, right? And which is what we're doing with the motivation.
I went to Soweto in December, and just to support a friend that has a brand called Tolokazi beer, and so we went there, and we went around, and what I found interesting was I met with a police officer there. He also was there off duty, and literally he just described around the fact that in the townships, there are so many people that are working that really just want the convenience that they normally experience within the city, or like in the urban areas. And for me, how you've described it before is, it seems there's a lot of uh, those individuals then that are your customers. So for example, business owners or people that are self-employed, they don't have the time then to run out and go get something, or a police officer comes home and literally he then or she doesn't necessarily now want to travel because it's, let's call it 4 p.m. or 5 p.m. They need that convenience, and this just adds to that level and that offering.
Yeah, because also, if you look with our townships, so if you look at your famous, top franchises, in a township, you'll find that there's one in a radius of like 30 kilometers, right? So during month end or peak, everybody goes there, right? And now think about that police officer, who just wants to get that famous chicken, they're thinking, really, that queue, right? And that's where we come in to say, look, you've worked hard. Last thing you need is to go and stand by the queue. We'll do that for you, right? And it's all these dynamics that make, Deliverica speech, relevant in the townships. All these important parts. There's a lot of guys who cook traditional food, but just don't have the delivery, system. We plug and play with them, and they're able to reach a much broader customer base. And look, it's not perfect, and I think for us, it's always been a testing ground. When we started initially, it was, look, we are testing this model, right? And so far the results are good, and that's why we're now closed our funding round to go national, which is something that we're really excited about this year. And yeah, man, it's been a great test. And someone was telling me, was like, you guys tested at the worst place ever, where the maps are not mapped out. The customers, sometimes they struggle with network. Sometimes they don't understand how the app works. So you've been able to answer all those. And if you were to expand, to an urban area, you definitely kill it.
I mean, that's super inspiring. We're going to get to the funding side just now. So one thing is that I interviewed the MD of RAM Hand to Hand Careers, Graham Lazarus, and he's of course in logistics. They're they've got 1,000 people, 1,600 vehicles, so they're at a massive scale level.
Yeah.
But logistics is logistics, and logistics is hard. Like, it's extremely difficult, and you're now entering into then, and let's call it a very seldom charted territory in the logistics space. So therefore, this is even like harder when it comes to now you trying to fulfill, on a delivery when there are, let's call it, not necessarily accurate maps, or, as you say, connectivity issues and all of these other challenges that perhaps are not at the level that, say, the bigger logistics focuses on urban businesses. They kind of don't necessarily experience that, even though it's even difficult for them just to get that done.
Yeah. No, and look, we put it on our shoulders, dude. We're like, look, we've grown now, right? By solving these problems, we've become smarter. We've learned, we've created some new features on our app just to be able to tackle those challenges. And yeah, look, that's how we look at it at the office, to say, look, all these challenges are there to make us better, right? And dude, if you could do it in the township, you could do it anyway, right? And I think that's been us for now. I mean, we've been trading for 2.5 years, and we've now said, look, our strategy this year is obviously to remain in the township, but also branch out of the townships, and because we believe there's a demand. We can't have just two players in the last mile delivery. We see a gap as Deliverica Speed, and we're looking forward to participating in the suburbs and the urban areas this year. Some cool partnerships, like I said, are in the pipeline, and yeah, it's going to be a great year.
Well, I promise when you do expand, just let me know where you are, and because I'm actually relocating now to Cape Town. So if you guys are going to also go to Cape Town, then just let me know, and I'll definitely be the customer. It will be epic to support you.
Great.
So
Thanks,
if we then go into the practicalities now of running this business, right? So yes, logistics inherently is very difficult. You've now gone into an uncharted territory, which makes it even more difficult. But managing the business, right? Now, there's so much content out there around entrepreneurs and their story, and it's kind of very much romanticized in my opinion. But what I really want to get to here is the practicalities of running this business, what you've been facing, or what challenges you've actually faced as a team, as a business, and how you are approaching, the growth of your business. So if we just start on one particular topic, let's just talk about currently right now, the systems that you are using within a Deliverica Speed. Are you using Google Suite, Google Workspace? Are you using Microsoft, the Office 365 system? Have you built certain technologies that you have your own? Like, just talk to me about, what everyone is using, what tools people are using so that they can actually do more, be more productive, with the same level of effort.
Yeah, sure. Look, I mean, when we started in 2021 in July, all we wanted to do was to deliver gas speed, right? and we started on WhatsApp, and we realized that that actually is not a good way to deliver gas speed, because it's so much manual work. And for you to be able to deliver gas speed, you need to automate most of the things, right? But I think us doing WhatsApp was, again, POC to see if there is a market, right? And 6 months later, we had been able to reach over 1 million in sales, right? Just on WhatsApp. And for us, it was like, guys, we're on the money now, right? Let's automate as much as possible. So we were able to get a platform, an app that's available on iOS and web, as well as Android, that has 3 apps, driver app, merchant app, customer app. And that's the platforms that we're using now. And even on our side, on our operations, we obviously use the famous platforms, your Slack, your Google G Suite, and all of that, just to manage the business from our side, and make sure that we are always efficient, because at the end of the day, all the things that we do at the office actually do affect the time it takes to deliver the order. So things like onboarding a merchant, how long that takes, being able to switch on a merchant, making sure that the menu looks great, making sure that the look and feel of the app looks great as well. That's on us, right? And we've been able to, get platforms. And where we don't know the answers, look, we'll get someone who can assist us, right? So on the tech side, we'll get someone who can assist us and make sure that our tech looks great and our customers, can enjoy the platform. But I think so far we actually have a good ecosystem of platforms working together. For example, with Big Safe, which is one of the clients that we have, they have a platform where the customers go to buy groceries. It's a website, but that is integrated into our logistics dashboard, right? And we do the delivery, and that's automated right through an API. So order comes from Big Safe, it gets to our logistics dashboard, it allocates a driver. The order gets completed without us lifting a finger, right? So again, we've set up our platform to be able to integrate with other, third-party platforms so that we can actually do the deliveries on their behalf. So look, I think so far we've been able to get good quality tech that can take us to where we need to be by the end of this year. Yeah.
So, I mean, I spent some time in my previous business. We had to have a logistics element. We did deliveries of hiring products and so on. So there was a lot of, let's call it, platforms, software out there that I could then just off the shelf, I could buy, pay a certain usage license, and then off I go. And even in South Africa, there's a logistics platform company called Loop, owned by or led by an incredible woman called Kim. And so are you building this in-house, or are you using a bit of off the shelf and in-house? Like, just talk to me about that.
So it's a bit of both, right? So there are parts where it's in-house and other parts that, are off the shelf. Look, I think, again, it's understanding where we are as a business, right? And understanding what are we capable of doing at the moment, and what is it that we could get from outside that could still work, the way we want it to work. So most of the front facing, it's mostly off the shelf, but everything in the background, right? It's internal work that we've been able to build ourselves, things like the analytics, and the data that we get, from the customers, and how do we make sense of all of that. We've been able to build systems to make sure that all that data can actually translate to proper information that we could use to grow the business. Yeah.
So then you've actually then been building, let's call it the logistics operation, the logistics software. That's what you have control over, right? So what's super interesting there is that then you have chosen to vertically integrate the business by controlling the technology, as well as then controlling that last mile customer experience, where a lot of businesses are focused on actually owning the technology. And I'll give this example: Loop, they just focus on technology. They're never going to, go into any other kind of offerings other than that technology, to my knowledge. And for me, I think this is a competitive advantage that you have relative to, say, new incumbents coming in, because, say, they're going to focus on, let's call it, owning the last mile, but you've got the tech. And so vice versa can happen. So just talk to me then about how you see that playing to your advantage now, going into the expansion into the urban areas now. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, look, I think it's the business design, right? I think you know very well that in this type of business, the margins are very, very tough, right? It's very, very low, and there's very few businesses that get to even break even, and we took time to understand why. Why these businesses are not making money, why these businesses, not breaking even, and part of it is actually tech, right? And they spend quite a lot of money on research and development, which is great, right? But I think for us, we looked at what does our customer actually need at the moment, right? Our customer just needs their food delivered to them at speed, and how can we make sure that is done in the most cost-effective manner, right? And choosing these type of platforms and integrating them with what we had was the best way, right? So when we go into the urban areas, right, if you look at who we're competing with and you look at their business design compared to ours, it's so different, right? And we believe that will be our competitive edge. Because we're a small business, we move faster, right? We can literally deploy a strategy today and it's off. And I think that will also be our competitive advantage. But more than that, we just want to give customer the good quality service, at a cost effective, manner, which will also drill down, right, to the customer's, cost, right? So if you look at what they will be spending on our competitors versus us, it might be different, right? But again, for us is the business design, which I think a lot of entrepreneurs, when they start, they don't think about to say, this business design, is it able to get me to break even? Is it sustainable that I can scale throughout Africa with this model? Or do I need to start, developing further as I go and I grow? And those are some of the things that we had to think about when we started Deliverica Speed and post the round, the funding round that we did now, is to say, okay, how far can we go with this model? And what does it get us? Can it get us to really, really break even and be profitable? And I truly believe so.
So then on that note, when it comes to the funding side of things, are you able to disclose who's funding, or at least give just an indication of, is this like, a big business? Is this a venture business? Is this private investors? Just maybe just share about that to see that mix.
Yeah, so we'll do an announcement, hopefully before the end of Q1, of the funding partner that we have. It is a VC, but in partnership with some of the partners that we have. So I could disclose it's a partnership with Telkom. So that's something that came out at the back of Telkom. And look, we are also looking at growing our business with Telkom, in that sense. So yeah, it's exciting. I think for us, look, we're very fortunate. We're currently in 3 provinces. And if you look at the partnerships that we have, these are big businesses. And for them to see value in us and saying, look, guys, we see potential as well in this small business, for us to scale, it's really exciting.
100% agree. So then, if we look then to the next stage of Deliverica Speed, I think by the way, if anyone hasn't figured it out yet, Deliverica Speed means speedy delivery.
Yeah.
I hope that's right? Because I did also when I did high school, so I didn't do Afrikaans. So when I saw your name, Deliverica Speed, I was like, hang on, I know that one. So
No, speedy delivery.
And directly in translation, I don't know if it's Sutu or like Setswana or Xhosa, but like,
Pretoria, like a
is it?
Pretoria slang. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Because for me, how I interpreted that from a Xhosa point of view was delivery of speed, like delivery with speed type of things. So yeah, you definitely
If you
tested
were
me
to
again
do it
on my Xhosa
properly
skills.
in English, it's probably delivery with speed, but that doesn't
Yes.
sound right. But
No,
yes.
exactly. Speedy delivery is far better.
Yeah.
Brilliant, man. So if we were to look then at that next chapter now, we've got this expansion. How are you going to approach making sure that your team thrives with this expansion? Because this is the point of scale now where a lot of businesses can fall flat. How are you going to focus on making sure practically that your team are going to grow and the business is going to scale, past the point?
Yeah, look, I think the team, it's sort of going to be like a mind shift, right? Because we've been so used to doing things the hard way. We've been solving, hard problems, and coming into the urban areas, it's going to be fairly easy, right? To solve the problems that will exist there. Look, I think for my team, the one thing that has always been at the core is customer service, right? We value our customers, dude. We value our customers, and in our business, customers is 3 people, right? It's the merchant, it's the driver, and it's the actual customer buying the food, right? And what we would see is with our competitors, the first 2 guys are not regarded as customers, they're not treated as customers. And for us coming into this market, I mean, the way we talk to our drivers, dude, we address them with their surname, right? We call them Mr. and Ma'am, right? And you can see how that changes how someone responds to you, right? When you call someone by their surname, it's the small things, right? So same with the merchants, right? The way we interact with them and the way we work with them, how we pay them, and all of that. that matters to the end customer, the service that they get. So for us is at the core of our business, no matter where we trade, in a village, in a township, in a city, the customer must always be happy, right? And again, to my point, we have 3 customers, right?
I mean, that just gave me goosebumps because it is just so important. And that if I were to think about one of the key negative impacts of a business scaling or growing to a size where they're dealing, with tens of thousands of orders, they start treating everyone like a number, like an order number, like a sales number. And really, like, that is what is the biggest differentiator in my mind of that feeling that someone actually feels heard and they feel that you see them, and as you've said before, you genuinely care and you're looking out for them in a world where we've got so many challenges, specifically in South Africa. And and as you've shared, specifically within townships, there's a lot more challenges that a lot of people are experiencing beyond what people are experiencing in the cities. So how do we make sure that everyone is treated with dignity so that they can be proud of who they are and also where they want to get to as well?
And it should be genuine, right? I mean, it should not feel like it's a tick box exercise, right? And I mean, for example, you look at what, the call center people, it's frustrating how they talk to you and how they call you, right? But you can tell, when it's genuine, dude. You can tell when someone really, really cares about you. And I think what we've done, knowing that at the office, we are the ones who are pushing for that, we've also had to take, some time to actually look after our mental health, right? So some of the things that we're doing at the office is everybody has access to a virtual, therapist, right? Because we absorb so much, right? And these people talk to us, right? We absorb so much that we also need to let go, right, to someone. And my team has access, to virtual therapists. I'm implementing a lot of walking and hikes this year for the team, just so that we can get to socialize outside of the office and be outside more, right? And it's all these things that, again, look, if you win the mind, if you win the heart, you will definitely win the wallet, which sounds a bit wrong, but
No, it's
but
it's 100% correct, and people are happy giving their money if they feel that they truly are getting something in return beyond just the product. It's also the feeling and the belonging.
100%.
Well, Khori, thank you so much. You've definitely enlightened me today. What you're sharing online is exactly what you're presenting now in terms of that authenticity. So I just wish you the best, and I'm so looking forward to the next chat that we have, say, in 2 years' time, because it's going to now be with the cities and definitely a different scale. So I'm just wishing you all the best, and thanks so much for giving up your time.
Thanks, man. Thanks for the platform. And this is, I think, the first platform where we've announced our expansion plan. So looking forward to seeing it officially out. And yeah, we'll be announcing the cities and the urban areas that we will be launching at. Something that we're really looking forward to. And yeah, once again, thanks for having me.